We will now meet with Dr. Vera Tarman. She is an addiction doctor with a specialty in food addiction. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Marci. I'm happy to be here.
It's great to have you here, and I know that this is a real problem. So let's talk about the addiction to processed foods and the reality of that. And how do these addictive qualities of certain foods contribute to our unhealthy eating habits and our well-being?
Okay, so that's a great question. And what's really important to know is, what is ultra processed food that is addictive? So just really, in a very quick way, if you think about an orange that has sugar in it, that's not a problem. That's a real food product. It's a real food, and that's fine. Then, if you process it a little bit more, you might have orange juice, and most people can tolerate orange juice. That's fine. But when you make it orange drink or orange pop, soda, that's no longer orange anymore. There might actually not even be any orange in that. That's ultra processed food. And in the making of a food into a food product, the food industry is not going to spend all that effort and just make something convenient and cheaper. They're going to do something that makes you want to buy their product. And so they're going to put stuff in it that makes it highly addictive. So basically, most processed foods, ultra processed foods, not the bread you make at home, but the bread that you buy in a store with a label with all sorts of ingredients in it that you don't have at home, it is intentionally made to make you want to eat it more. And if you do enough of that, it's like if you have one cigarette, you're not a smoker, but if you're doing it 20 times a day, you're a smoker. So similarly, if you're eating foods, ultra processed foods on a regular basis, you become addicted to it. And this is the food industry intentionally doing this.
Oh, wow. So let's talk
Yeah.
about specific foods that are most addictive. Like what can we look for?
Yeah. So number one, and you would do yourself a huge favor if you stop. That would be all the pop and the soda. That right there, because there's nothing nutritional in that. If you look at candy, cakes, and I'm not talking about homemade stuff. I'm talking about stuff that you buy at the store, donuts. Anything that's basically ultra processed has got something in it. So candies, cakes, cookies, that's all ultra processed. That is a problem. Even something like yogurt with the filler in it and the
Hmm.
sweetener in it, ultra processed. It can be something healthy. Cheese is fine, but cheese whiz is not fine because it again it's ultra processed. So it's got to do with what's happening in the processing of it that makes it addictive. So basically anything in the store with a label of ingredients that you don't recognize that you can't get yourself in your own pantry is a problem.
So let's say we do have a problem, right? That we
Yeah.
are eating these ultra processed foods. How can we help ourselves? How can we stop doing that?
Yeah, so that is the $1 million question. How can we stop? So, number one, if a person finds that they're eating a little bit too much of the, I guess we call it convenient or tasty foods, if you can now start to control your use, start to curb it, keep it to, I think you mentioned earlier on, in indulgence. Literally keep it as an indulgence, but not a daily indulgence, not an indulgence of 3 times a day, literally once a week or once every 2 weeks. And if you can do that, then you haven't actually gone over you haven't actually moved into addiction. But if you find that you're already not being able to control it, it might be time to say, this is a food that I'm now declaring a food drug. We call it drug foods.
Mhm.
And in the same way as I have to quit smoking, that means I don't just cut down, because you can't cut down when you're a regular smoker. You have to quit. So we would say, figure out what your foods are that you are, quote, addicted to. We call them trigger foods. And then you have to learn how to abstain from them, which is not easy, but it is ultimately essential. So if you're not there yet, control your use. But if you are, sorry, you're going to have to quit.
An addiction to food is very, very real. So, how is it that we can, like, for instance, if you're stop drinking or you're stopping drugs, and there are
Mm.
places that can help. How can we help ourselves if we, in fact, have addiction to food?
Yeah. So if we're actually at the stage of being addicted to food, then we have to stop. And you're absolutely right. It's not easy to stop because Otherwise, we would, that's the nature of addiction, is that you want to stop and you can't. Because if you do, you're going to have consequences. Like you won't be able to sleep, you'll be in a bad mood, you'll be agitated, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, you have to get help. And there is actually, you're right, at this stage of the game, because food addiction is not acknowledged in the psychiatric world. We're still working under the radar, trying to make this a condition, by the way. But until that happens, there is no actual residential treatment. But because we know that those of us in the field that are working in the field know that it's a problem, there are actually more and more people who are trained to work outpatient, not inpatient, not in a treatment center yet, but out in the community. There's a lot of groups that exist. There's a lot of food coaches that exist, and basically, if you want to get started on your own, keto or low carb communities actually have a lot of food plans that are very food addiction friendly. But the whole point about addiction, it's not just about the food; it's also the behavior, and you're going to need a coach or a therapist or somebody, or even a 12-step group. We have food addiction 12-step groups. Overeaters Anonymous is the number one, well-known one. But anyway, once you recognize this is an addiction and I have to treat it like an addiction, more and more services are becoming available.
Thank you so much for coming on and talking about food addictions. We talk so much about other types of addictions, but this is real. And this is happening to so many people worldwide. So I appreciate you coming on Wake Up and educating us. So to find out more information, or if someone has more questions, how can we find you?
Yeah, the best way to find me is if you follow Facebook. I know my generation does, maybe not the younger folks, but I do have a free Facebook group, which is called I'm Sweet Enough, Sugar Free for Life. And if you sign on there, I have lots of resources that are available. A lot of coaches come on there. It's like a clearinghouse of resources. I also am developing a YouTube channel with lots of information, also free. So that's one way. I have a website that's called addictionsunplugged.com. And finally, if you just want to start, I have a book that's called Food Junkies, Recovery from Food Addiction. You can get it on Amazon, and it talks all about food addiction in a way that you'll understand.
Yes. Thank you so much again for coming on and letting us know what types of resources and what we need to look for. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Marci. I really appreciate you asking me.
Okay. Bye-bye.